What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. We're here for another episode of the F1 2020 career mode. We are coming here off the back of a really disappointing Bahrain Grand Prix. Had the pace in the feature race, and unfortunately we had a gearbox failure, and then in the sprint race we just didn't plan out the weekend probably as good as we should. So we learned a lot, especially from the feature race and sprint race, looking after our gearbox and tyres. Naturally, it's going to be something we're going to be focusing on for the rest of the season. But here for practice in Azerbaijan, we're going to top the practice times by a pretty fair distance, I'd say. A lot better than what we had done in, let's say, Baku, for example. But nonetheless, obviously, in qualifying, you do obviously only have one set of tyres. So we're going to leave it pretty late to go out and set our lap time, which we're probably going to do for the rest of the season. Just that way, we've got a maximum, chance of getting as high up as possible, with the track rubbered in and whatnot. But what I will say is, obviously, our first lap, we're about to come across the line, and we've got some pretty good pace as we set the first time on the board, and it's going to be fastest at 151.6, and that was fast enough to get us provisional pole. And we actually end up going for a second run on these tyres. We didn't do too good in Sector 1. We get purple through Sector 2. Not great out of what is essentially the last corner of Turn 16. But we're going to get a bit of a slipstream down through 18, 19 and eventually through 20 on Tatiana Calderon. So she's going to help us boost our time, just in case any of the cars behind us could subsequently better their time. I mean, there's only, I believe, 4 cars on the track map who could potentially do that, so we're not going to take any risks. We're going to come across the line and set an even better time than before, purple in the last sector. We've even got the achievement pop up in the right hand side, so that will be pole position here. That's 4 points for us in the championship. So we finally, after 2 races, we now have some points on the board in the third race. That's going to be pole position for ourselves. We're going to see how the rest of the grid lines up and see exactly what we can do from there. But feeling good going into this Grand Prix. Obviously, traditionally Baku hasn't really been a great race for us in career modes on this channel, but hopefully we can maybe make a change here. Especially seeing us as F2 cars. Obviously I do like F2, pretty handy in them, turns out. Did some online races with a few of my friends, Ryan L83 being one of them, and I seem to have the legs on him, which is always great. But nonetheless, we're going to get into this Grand Prix. It's basically going to be a job of looking in our mirrors the whole race. We've got Nobuharu Matsushita, it looks like, on the second row, or if not, just behind us. But nonetheless, it's going to be difficult to try and see where our pace is. There's not really anyone we can really look out for in terms of championship rivals per se. I mean, Jordan King obviously was racing with us the entire race for the feature race, and then obviously he ended up getting a podium in the sprint race. So Jordan King does look very strong. Dorian Boccolacci ended up winning the first one. So it does seem like a pretty strong outfit. We're going to have to see how everyone else goes. But looking at the starting grid, obviously ourselves in P1, Nobuharu in P2, Nick De Vries P3, followed by Callum Ilott in P4, Antoine Hubert P5, Jordan King, the man, who is definitely going to be interesting to watch, not too far behind us. Our teammate Mick Schumacher in P11. So not a great result in qualifying for him, to say the least. But Nicholas Latifi, the graduate to F1 in this season, P18, and then Mahavir Raghunathan, P19. Going to keep solid updates on Raghunathan throughout this season, as obviously it's rather important. And when my team comes out, he might even be picked for my team. But nonetheless, we're ready for the formation lap now. In Bahrain, I figured something out about halfway through this Grand Prix weekend, and I'll explain it to you in a little bit. So obviously, coming on the formation lap, obviously, you do your normal thing. You heat your tyres, heat your brakes, and what that to make sure you've got pretty good temperatures for when you start the race. So obviously pulling into our grid slot, you're going to see the difference between this race and next episode, where I skipped it again just to see if it makes a difference, and boy does it make a difference. But the grid reformed pretty damn quickly, so we're ready for the fire lights to go out here for the feature race in Azerbaijan. And this is the consequence of heating your tyres perfectly. We actually got an amazing start, probably the best start we're going to get all season in these cars. Managed to hold off Nobuharu, De Vries up to P3, Hubert up to P4. So whoever was in the second row really did seem to kind of struggle. But coming on to the end of lap 2, about to start lap 3 very shortly, you can see we've got a bit of a gap. We've gapped De Vries a little bit, so he's going to be out of DRS zone currently, which is obviously handy for us. Obviously going to have people behind him, like Nobuharu is going to try and catch up to him, and it will be within DRS. So we set the fastest lap, and then it gets taken away pretty quickly by Nobuharu, who eventually gets ahead of Nick De Vries. And you can see on lap 4 we've kind of gapped him a little bit, so we've got a pretty good gap, so we can kind of focus on just managing our gearbox making sure we don't have any dramas like that as we still try and figure it out. We're going to come in very aggressively into the pit lane and manage to get it slowed down with plenty of time to save. We probably could have shaved a few more tenths off of that at least coming into the pit lane, but we want to be conservative. We don't want to, you know, potentially get a penalty and end up throwing away the race win. That's the last thing we need, especially in this season. But a few cars are coming into pit lane as of now. Obviously our teammate Schumacher obviously continues on. We're going to put on the yellow wall tyres and we're ready to go, and it looks like we're about to be held by a car, and of course who else would it be other than Jordan King? So King is going to prove to be a massive thorn in our side. I feel like we're going to have a really good rivalry with him this season. But coming on to the start, lap 7, we hopefully should be able to jump Nobuharu, because he stayed out an extra lap. Wasn't too bad of an outlap, to be fair. We did push pretty hard, obviously maintaining the damage to our gearbox is obviously as minimal as possible. But P11, everyone obviously in the pit lane, as you can see, Nobuharu started to move out of his grid slot, so it's going to be quite tight between ourselves and the Japanese driver. We're going to go through turn 1, we go extremely wide on exit, which is not ideal. We can't see Nobuharu anywhere, and it turns out he's to the left of us. He's actually jumped us momentarily. We're going to have to hang around the outside to try and get past him. We actually get better traction, obviously being on the outside for a corner you do get a better exit, as you can put the throttle down a lot earlier. But momentarily we actually lost the lead of this Grand Prix, officially at least anyway, so that was a bit scary to say the least. He's actually hung on to us pretty well. We've got a pretty good exit out of turn 16, so that pushes us all the way down to turn 1 with little dramas. Jordan King there in what is now P4, P3, battling back and forth with Callum Ilott. So again, like I said, King's looking very strong. We still can't gap Nobuharu, which is really frustrating. Obviously we've got quite a bit of a gap to Callum Ilott. There's about a 5-second gap between him and P2, so Ilott's looking pretty good. Obviously Jordan King's not too far off the trail of that, and then same for De Vries. It's really tight with those 3 guys, but again, even I'm about to start lap 12, we've got a bit of damage to our front wing, and you see our gearbox is looking a little bit worse for wear per se, so we're definitely trying to take it easy and not cause any damage. We've got a VSC at the moment, and that is because Jordan King is out of the session. So given the fact that I said he's going to be a thorn in our side, he's actually ended up retiring from the Grand Prix. Him and De Vries and possibly someone else had obviously come together, so that's obviously not ideal. So the VSC wasn't out for too long, only about half a lap, which is quite surprising. I'm assuming it's probably down the back straight or something like that, but nonetheless we're going to power on. We've only got a few more laps to go in this feature race, and we're going to have to try and hold off Nobuharu, as well as managing the gearbox in the front wing and then the tyre, where luckily we haven't got to worry about fuel. For whatever reason in Bahrain we absolutely nearly ran out of fuel. Louis Delatraz is now retired from the session, so that might bring out a new VSC, but nonetheless it's going to be really tight with ourselves and Nobuharu coming into turn 1. We're going to get a little bit sideways on the exit, so he might try. We're going to give him a squeeze as we come into turn 2. We're going to go all the way around the outside again to get better traction. He will have DRS, so traction is the one thing we need, and we managed to hold on to the position as of currently, but he's going to sit in our DRS, so we're going to hold the inside line. Might have to hang him out to dry coming into turn 3. We're going to go down the inside, brake a little bit later, squeeze him on the X. He's got nowhere to go, as he'll just tuck in behind us as we continue on. But it was a very, very bad exit from ourselves, to say the least, and these tyres are starting to go up a little bit. You can see he's got another great exit on us there, and again we're going to hang him out to dry a little bit. There's not really an overtaking opportunity here, so we managed to maintain that position for now, but he's a lot closer this time. He's with about 3.5 tenths before we even got to the DRS zone, so we're going to have to pull off some amazing defensive skills here to even try and hold Nobuharu back. But he's dropped a little bit coming through turn 18 and 19. I'm not quite sure why. I've got a feeling he probably doesn't have much downforce on his car as we do, but obviously we're going to squeeze him a little bit all the way to the inside. That's going to pass us momentarily, and we're going to send it down the inside on the penultimate lap and just about navigate the wall as well as him. He probably didn't expect us to come straight back through, but we very nearly ended up in the wall at the exit of turn 1, so that's not great. Obviously at this point we're pushing our gearbox a little bit. Callum Ilott is actually about 1.5 seconds behind us. Again, Nobuharu is still trying to come at us, and he's making my life incredibly difficult, is that Carlin driver. Again, we'll do the exact same we did about a lap and a half ago, hang him out to dry, and tell you what, if Callum Ilott can actually start battling him with him, that would actually be amazing. Guan Yu Zhou is up into P4, but we're here on the final lap. As you can see, we've got set the purple middle sector. We're able to push a little bit on the last lap. We have some gearbox in reserve, but we're going to come across the line to take our first win of the season, our first win of the series, and finally our first win in F2. you know, third time's a charm, right? After having an awful Bahrain, we do manage to finally get the dub. And Guan Yu Zhou with the driver of the day, well deserved, given where he started as the way he finished. So he did a fantastic job. Just missing out on the podium, unfortunately for him. But Prema do get their first win of the season. Hopefully many, many more. But just in reference to, obviously, with the mods and stuff like that, obviously by this point I have obviously modded in the race suits, car and helmet. You have up until the French Grand Prix that I pre-recorded, so you won't have it from there, unfortunately. So until then, unfortunately, we're going to obviously have to look at the awful default helmet and obviously liveries. But again, not too bad. Dorian Boccolacci ended up P6 after winning the first race. I guess that's not too bad for him, obviously being partnered with Jack Aitken. It's going to be quite hard for him. Been to see where Jack eventually starts his season. He hasn't seemed to start yet, but we're going to take top step of the podium with Nobuharu and obviously Callum Ilott, handing the trophy to me, probably someone important from Baku. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, but nonetheless we're going to take it, and it's definitely better late than never, shall we say. It's definitely been a very long and hard wait for the race win, and it was just horrific. If you guys haven't seen what happened in Bahrain, you can just hear my disappointment and how upset I was when it came down to it. But obviously we're going to be celebrate. We're going to check out the standings in just a second. You can see Guan Yu Zhou ended up getting the fastest lap, obviously being within DRS. There was no chance of us ever getting it, but we're now P2. If you have enjoyed, guys, please do slap a like on it. It helps me out massively. If you're new on there, do subscribe for more Formula 1 content coming out every other day. But until next time, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye bye.